I'm Wendy Capewell, an experienced counsellor and psychotherapist. I work with so many people who feel that they're the only ones struggling with the issues that they share with me. Possibly, like many of you, they feel so alone. And so the aim of this podcast is to talk to guests who have their own stories to share, their experience of the struggles that they've been through, or maybe they're continuing to live with, offering their insights as well as their inspiring journey. So let me introduce my guest. So I've been chatting already to this lovely lady, Dr. Marcia Martin. She is, I'm going to get it right, a spiritual empowerment counselor. And she lives in Los Angeles. And we've been chatting already, and it's just so nice to catch up with her. We've been putting the world to rights a bit already. But I want to hand over to you, Marcia, and please tell the audience much more about you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And as you said, I have been enjoying our chat so far. And what we were talking about is really what I do best, and that is helping people to recover from abuse and trauma. And the thing that I think is most significant about that is that you can look back and ask yourself, how did I get here? But the path getting there is not clear. It is hidden. It is a long, windy path, and it is so easy to fall into the dynamic. So, if you are a person who is currently experiencing any sort of trauma or abuse, the first thing I want you to remember is not to blame yourself and not to feel badly, but to recognize, okay, I am where I am. I did get here. I did allow this to happen. And now I can choose for something different to start beginning. So, when you are taking responsibility for ending up in a traumatic or abusive relationship, you're not doing it so that you can feel badly. You're doing it so you can recognize that you are powerful enough to have gotten yourself in the situation. Therefore, you are powerful enough to get yourself out. So let's never assign blame, just responsibility.
Oh, I think that's so right, because I think I've been in an abusive relationship, and I just kept saying to myself, how could I, an intelligent woman, how could I get into this situation? What is wrong with me? Why have I done this? And there's that, well, guilt is one thing. I think you can feel guilty and say, well, maybe I should have done something a little bit different. I could have thought a bit harder about this. Why didn't I look at the kind of red flags? But that shame that's attached to it, which I don't think is appropriate. It's not, and it's not good for us at all.
It's just going to keep you buried in that relationship for longer, because at early on in the relationship, you probably were saying to yourself, this doesn't feel quite right. And then your abuser caught on to the fact that you were getting uncomfortable, and they cleaned up their act for a while, and you dug in a little bit more, as we do in relationships, and you invested a little bit more, as we do in relationships, and it became more problematic to leave. So it isn't that you just were completely out to lunch as you walked into this relationship. It was that what you were offended by kept getting walked back again and again and again. And because we never enter a relationship hoping it's going to end, we all say, oh, I must have been mistaken. Oh, they didn't mean that. Let me give that person another chance. And then we get extremely invested. We start really owning our desire for this relationship to continue. This is why, when it finally gets to the breaking point, which is a beautiful moment, it's painful, but it's necessary and it's beautiful because it will give you the chance to release yourself. But when it finally gets to the breaking point, you cannot use the wisdom that you have gained through the experience and say, why didn't I know that going in? Well, you'd never encountered it before. You hadn't understood how you would react to certain stimuli. Now you do know. So now it is your responsibility to make sure you get out of that relationship and you hold higher standards so you don't get into a similar relationship. But you certainly can't go back and say, gosh, I have a history of abuse or trauma in my childhood. So it felt very familiar to me when this guy or girl started doing these things that were a little off, but were part of my normal everyday experience growing up or part of my other relationships. We have to remember that when we normalize something because we have encountered it for a period of time,
Yeah.
we're not going to recognize it as abnormal until something comes to shake us up.
Yeah.
We're going to just keep going, keep going, keep going, investing more and more and more until something comes that is so different or so unnerving that we will actually be able to stop, take a breath, and say, whoa, how did I get here? And that's when we can't add in that, and I'm an intelligent woman, or I should have known better. That's when we got to keep that out because that conversation is going to keep you stuck. For
Yeah.
myself, I had that conversation 10 years
Mm.
before I was willing to look at the fact that I needed to leave. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
it's,
think it is all sorts of things hold us, don't they? There is that fact, well, yeah, the guilt and shame, there's loyalty, there's the feeling of, well, it must be me, I've got to try harder. Um, you're nodding your head, so you're recognizing this one too. And all of the things I'm so embarrassed I can't tell friends and family that I
oh,
do.
yes, yes, that's another one. And let's remember too, the abuser is as invested in the relationship as you are. They want you to stay. So they are going to do things that will alleviate the pain for a short period of time so
Yep,
that you will stop complaining or stop noticing
yep,
the abuse. They'll change up their tactics. They might go dormant or they may become much more subtle, and they will encourage you not to engage with those friends and family that may notice that you are not okay. So it's not just you in the relationship. It's not just you that really was um, conned. It is you and then a whole conflagration of events that are continuing to help you stay where you are. However, as always, we got to take responsibility for the fact that we allowed it to continue.
mm,
We agreed to ignore what was going on, or we talked ourselves into staying long past what should have been an exit point. And we take responsibility not to blame or shame ourselves, but so that we can understand that we are powerful creators. We can create a better life for ourselves. Certainly for myself, when I stayed and stayed and stayed, my conversation was, I can't do this without this other person. They are the one that is holding this very rickety life together.
yeah,
So I had given all of my power to the other person and then kept telling myself that I was powerless. And this really reinforced I cannot leave. And that's why I want everybody to recognize you're powerful, whether you are recognizing it or not. You're just not using your power in the best way possible. I was using my power to stay stuck.
Yeah, and when you were talking there, and I was thinking back because this was decades ago now, but thinking back to that situation, I just felt it for me. I didn't feel I was able to get a breath because it was 1 minute.
Mm.
Um, there was an abuse, and the abuse. I mean, it wasn't physical abuse, but it was emotional and verbal abuse, and it would be there would be kind of something abusive said, and then I would respond or react, and then just felt like it. And then, as you say, it would be the reparation on their part, and they would try harder, and they'd expect me to try harder, and it just felt like I felt like a whirling dervish, that kind of being.
Yes, and let's remember
I haven't
they
got
are they're
think.
busy manipulating it so that, when they see you out of breath or sort of spinning,
Yeah,
confused, they will use that confusion to insert even more of this emotional mental abuse to make sure that you are really on board with, Wendy, you really don't have much to offer, or you're lucky that you're with me because nobody else would want you. They are using these kinds of manipulations when they see that you're off balance.
yeah,
So again, you're not in this alone.
yeah,
They are pushing you in the direction that they want you to go. What I want you to remember is you are powerful. And just because they're pushing you, you don't need to allow them to send you off in the direction they want to go.
yeah,
You need to, even in the midst of this, take that deep breath, ground yourself, remind yourself, I am powerful, and make the choice that is for your highest good. And recognize it's probably next to impossible to do this by yourself. So reach out to a counselor. A friend won't know what to say or do. And a friend may say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're staying in that relationship. The friend may add frenetic energy to your already confused energy
yeah,
because they're scared for you.
yeah.
So seek out a counselor, someone who has the training and the experience to be able to hold you steady and help you make informed choices.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so true because friends, they may watch from the outside, but you're probably covering up anyway. You
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm sure you don't, I never
they
told the
know.
truth.
No, and then they could see snippets, but they don't know, they don't want to interfere. They feel that it's not their place or they're worried about it. And I think you're so right. When you do tell them, they don't know what to do or what to say. So yeah, that was my experience. And I think experience of so many other, I'm going to say men or women, because it can happen either way, let's face it. And
Yes. We hope both happen to be women, but there are just as many men who are in this situation. And
yeah,
it doesn't matter what the uh, what kind of relationship you are in. This is not specific to a specific or a certain kind of relationship. It is across the board. And it doesn't just happen to good people or bad people. Everyone can be subject to abuse or trauma. So let's take away any of the labels or any of the ways in which you may be categorizing yourself. Like Wendy said, I'm an intelligent woman. I had the same thing. I'm an intelligent woman. How did I get here?
yeah,
It has nothing to do with your intelligence, your age, your sex, your gender, the type of relationship you're in. It is just a matter of, are you loving yourself enough
mm,
to get out of harm's way when you see that an individual may not be able to be in a healthy relationship with you? Or are you discouraging self love and putting all of your efforts into loving another person? Are you saying to yourself, I will only have value when another person shows me that I am lovable? And I think I know that's how I walked into my relationship is I had really zero to limited self-love. And so I was easy pickings for somebody who was also not healthy and was wanting a relationship, not for the purpose of wanting to abuse me, but to make themselves feel better.
Yeah, because I don't think the intention, there is sometimes people who will just want to abuse, but generally they're not going in with that intention. But
No.
it
And the other person can be a good person.
yeah,
It's not so cut and dry, but
no,
they're going to be confused or they're going to have their own issues.
yeah,
So you must make sure that you present yourself as a self loving being
mm,
before you enter into any relationship.
yeah,
So that if somebody were to say something to you or do something to you that is not acceptable, you are able to say, I'm just not going to put up with that. That doesn't feel nice. I am not going to stay in a place where I am not honored.
mm,
And you don't have to do it angry. You don't have to do it yelling or mean spirited. You
mm.
can simply say, this relationship isn't working out for me.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think it's taking the courage to be able to walk away. It's taking the courage to say, I'm worth more. And who could I speak to? And I think so many people feel worried about speaking to someone like you or me because um, they don't know what to expect. They think they're going to be told what to do. They think they're going to be shamed even more and judged. And they may think that we will go and tell somebody, where actual fact, you and I know it's completely confidential. Only in the rare cases where we feel there is real harm to one or other parties, do we think about we might take action and just, yeah, we've got to talk about this because we can't hold it if we feel that one or other, or even children could be harmed. But I think generally it is, yeah, we're going to hold it and we're not going to judge you. We're not going to tell you you've got to leave now. We're not going to tell you you're a bad person. We're not going to shame you because you're feeling bad enough as it is. You don't need that. Yeah,
Yeah, judgment has no place in the healing process.
no, definitely hasn't. No, you've been feeling shamed enough as it is without
Oh,
some.
and I guarantee you that your abuser has been using shame as a way to hold you in place. And let's be very clear. If someone uses shame, they are not a very highly evolved person. They are not mentally well. You don't want to shame another person unless you feel somehow less than yourself. It's not normal to shame another person. It's normal to lift people up, to inspire them, to make them feel better. We grow and we expand, and we all feel better when we're sharing joy.
Yeah,
So if someone likes to shame you, that's a red flag right there, especially if a therapist wants to shame you. You absolutely do not keep the second appointment. That is not okay.
no, absolutely not. I just wanted to add that why, because people do feel quite worried about approaching someone like you or me. They're not quite sure what's going to happen. And it just is, it's a place, and it's a place for them to just almost check out what's right and what isn't. Am I right in thinking this? Is this right? Is this okay? Because they've been doubting themselves for so long, haven't they? So I think quite often you want someone to, well, is it okay for someone to speak to me like this? Is it okay for somebody to treat me in this way? Because they've been brainwashed to believe they're the ones that are fault.
And also, a very clever technique that is used is gaslighting, in which someone will deny that they said something.
Mm.
And if it goes on long enough, you really begin questioning, did I say that? So to have another person that is not involved say to you, I believe that you are saying what you believe you are saying, and this other person is pretending that they didn't hear it, you didn't say it, they didn't say it. When what they will often do is make you a promise and then pretend when you ask them to keep that promise,
Yeah,
oh, I never said that. And
yeah,
and yes, they did. It
yeah.
makes it very difficult to be in the relationship because there's no solid ground.
No,
You get to the point where you're like, okay, everything out of that person's mouth is a maybe, but how do you live your life in a maybe? So it is important then when you would have somebody who you could rely on
yeah,
that could help you understand, if you want to stay in the relationship, here are some steps that you can take.
yeah,
Or if you feel that you need to get out, here's support that I can offer you to get out with at the least amount of damage possible.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing this today. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm going to ask you, what is one thing that you'd like people listening to take away?
I think it's so incredibly important that we recognize that our heart must be healed, not the romantic heart, that heart of unconditional love that connects us with our source, with connects us with everyone. When we have gone through traumatic or abusive situations, we must clear that pain and that hurt so that we don't carry it with us.
Mm.
Once we clear it, we can really transform our lives. But if we continue to hold it, it will follow us and lead us back into more abusive situations. So clear and heal the heart so you can live a life that has been transformed into joy.
That's great. That's great advice. I will put all your details, contact details in the show notes, but what's one easy way that people can get in touch with
Oh, come to my website. It's mmhearthealer.com. And then it links out to all of the other things that I am doing.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting talking to you. So thank you. It's been, yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
It's been wonderful to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I hope you found this episode interesting as well as helpful. Do get in touch if you would like to learn more about working with me. My email address is info@wendycapewell.co.uk. Take good care of yourself. Until next time.